Hello, I'm Tag.
And this is Bob.
And you're listening to Bob and Tag Talk. Before we start the show, I'd like to point out that the topics discussed on Bob and Tag Talk are for informational purposes only. So please don't take this as investment advice. We urge you to do your own research before making any investment. So today we're going to talk about our money habits and the personalities behind and how different personalities maintain their money differently. So you mentioned that there was this quiz that was very interesting.
Yeah, so the interesting quiz on the social media was that let's say you're given $1 million. It is not something that you work for, it is not something that you have earned. It's either a gift or it is an inheritance.
Okay.
So once you are given that choice, basically you have three different options. So either you can choose to receive that money when you're 30, or when you're 40, or when you're 50. These are the three choices.
Okay.
A lot of people had made their choices, and most of them had chose to receive that money at the age of 30.
Okay.
And very few people on 40, and the least was on 50.
Okay.
So there is no right or wrong answer for this particular quiz. It is just a matter of each person's choice and each person's personality and when they want to utilize that particular money.
Right. You know, it's like if you had asked me this question when I was in my early 20s, I'd have definitely said, you know, I would like to receive my money at 30, which is the least age, right? So that I can like travel or go somewhere or something like that. I would have been in a very spending mode.
Yeah, basically you're thinking of how to spend that money.
Yes. But yeah, like if you ask me the question now, I'd probably answer like, you know, I'd put it in like some sort of an investment plan or something.
Oh, so the age does not change, it's just what you'd want to do with the money.
Yeah.
Options are changing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's interesting how different personalities maintain and manage their money. So you know, there are different aspects of it. So there's people who spend less than they earn, spend more than they earn, and then, you know, sort of like equalize. So I thought we could talk about that also a little bit.
Yeah. So again, we have already discussed most of these topics in our previous discussions as well. But the main idea is this. So people who want to invest, or people who want to have a kind of a retirement plan or whatever it is, want to do good financial planning. So their aim should always be to spend less than they earn,
Right.
and then to get as much high savings as possible. So this is the most ideal scenario. So people who spend more than they earn, that means that they are already at a disadvantage.
Right.
They are either using credit cards, or they are borrowing to basically to subsist their lifestyle. So it's basically a high lifestyle or high expense kind of a thing, which is actually putting it at a disadvantage for savings or for your future retirement plans or in financial management as in general. For people who it's equal, because who really find it tough to save, because either the income is very less or they're just starting out, so they'll not be able to save more.
Right.
So most likely in that particular kind of a stage, their savings is mainly zero, and whatever they earn, they equally spend, and hopefully if they have no debt, at least they have a little bit of an advantage.
Right.
As they earn more, as long as they keep the same lifestyle, they don't increase their spending. So in that case, they will eventually have a good kind of an advantage in the future savings.
Got it. So yeah, three different types of personalities: who spend less, who spend more, and who don't really have a lot of savings. Right
and
now.
This kind of thing is very important. This actually applies to when you receive your money as well.
Okay.
So generally what happens is people, when they're actually starting out a new job, or so they don't generally have a lot of expenses, but their earning capacity is very less. So in that kind of a scenario, if they choose to earn $1 million at 30 or something like that, let's say you're not earning as high as possible, but the three other options is that so either you're spending too much, you're spending too less, or you're spending the same amount as you earn. And when you receive the $1 million, the people who generally spend too much will most likely the higher chance of spending the whole $1 million away.
Right.
So it's a higher risk.
Right.
So it is better that you defer it
Right.
to the last stage of your life.
Right.
People who don't or who are not accustomed to savings.
And there's also the psychology that you mentioned that say you are given $1 million as opposed to earning it. The psychology is more along the lines that you feel like spending it because you haven't really
Yes, you haven't actually earned it. You have not found it. I mean, earned it in the sense earning $1 million is different from saving $1 million.
Right.
When you save $1 million, it's very, very difficult to spend it.
Yeah, because you put your heart and soul into it.
Saving it, and you will try your best not to depreciate or squander it.
Yeah.
But when you earn it, maybe you have the confidence that you can earn that $1 million again, so you're okay to spend it. So it's a possibility. There are people who are confident of their earnings, or the people who, at their age probably, they're confident of earning more, either through their business or to their job. But earning $1 million is very difficult, but through a business it's much more possible. So it's much more, likely in that case.
Makes sense. So another point of discussion that we wanted to make was lottery winners. How have they managed to save their money, and if they win, have they managed to save their money?
There was actually a popular survey, I guess, of all the previous lottery winners in the past 20 years or something. I think it was again. We're not actually sure about the source, but it was just a discussion on the social media.
It was a pretty common survey.
Common discussion and surveys. So the outcome of the survey was most people who win a lottery, and at least more than 70 to 80% of them eventually spend it all. And they go back to the state where they were before winning the lottery. So the state has not changed. They may have lot of possessions, they may have a lot of things, but their financial state is the same. But they may have a lot of possessions and things like that. Very few of them probably buy or invest in a smarter way, at least in that way that they protect that particular value as much as possible. Basically, they're making sure at least in a way that inflation is not reducing the value of the assets they have. And they choose to do it in a proper way. There are very few people, very, very rare people who have, increased that value. So basically, they have made an investment, and that investment has probably made that money double or triple. It's very, very rare.
And it's like now it begs the question. Like this is what I thought about. So people who actually want to save and grow their money rarely go through the route of these quick money routes anyway. So I don't think that a person who is willing to save and grow their money would actually want and get a lottery ticket or anything of that sort, no?
I mean, lottery. I mean, at least in the US, right? Lottery tickets can be gifted, and it is just done on festivals, kind of thing, kind of a fun event, kind of a thing. So some people do it for fun, some people do it for serious. It's a different kind of a mentality. Like you mentioned, it the likeliness is basically is a person leaning towards high risk, high reward scenarios, or are they prefer low risk and stable rewards kind of a scenario? That also comes as part of a personality.
Interesting. So what you said about lottery winners, it goes to show that even if you do have money, if you don't know how to grow it or how to manage your money properly, you will lose or depreciate that money eventually.
So basically, for example, if you receive that $1 million at 30 years, let's say you don't spend it, you just keep it as it is. Let's say you keep it as in a savings account or something. Savings account is you may not get as much interest.
You're just storing your money.
You're just storing your money. You're not doing anything with it. Let's say after 30 years, we know, as we have discussed before, we know the effects of inflation, we know the effects of monetary policy and a lot of other economic things that we have discussed. So the time value of money that we had discussed before, so it will always depreciate. So $1 million when today is worth more than $1 million 10 years later, even if you put in a savings account. But let's say you invest in something like an inflation linked kind of an investment, or at least it is equal to inflation. So most simple scenario is something like real estate. Let's assume in this scenario, assumption is made that real estate value, if inflation increases, the value of the real estate also increases equal to inflation. So let's take this as an assumption. So in that way, let's say you take $1 million and you buy a $1 million home, and if you keep it for 10 years, that means at least if there is 5% inflation, after 10 years, you have a return of equal, at least your money value is not depreciated.
Right.
It is still inflation protected. So
Right.
you still have that same value of money
Okay.
10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But if you choose to spend it, obviously you're choosing to spend it just either to, if you're not buying real estate, you're doing something else. So either you buy possessions which depreciate in value, like how we have discussed before, like how you buy electronic products and everything, cars, automobiles, everything has a depreciation value. As time passes, all the value of anything depreciates.
Yeah.
Gold is one thing which we consider as non-depreciating.
Right.
That is an investment.
Right.
So any investment we consider, most likely what we are hoping is that at least it is equal to inflation.
Right.
Or
And it appreciates over
or
time.
it appreciates over time, so that more than inflation, so that we get a really good return and we are increasing the value of the money that we have.
Okay, makes sense. So we talked a little bit about this, but yeah, the risk takers and the safe players, the style that they choose to like save and spend money, and how they grow their money rather than saving and spending, how they choose to grow their money.
It's usually, general mentality of most people that we know of, or in our kind of a circle that we have. Let's say you're just joining a job first time. You're just 25 years old, and let's say you earn something like let's say 10,000 rupees, or which is equivalent to like 10,000 rupees, or less than $100-$200 a month.
Yeah.
It's about that. So if you're learning like that, it's very, very difficult for you to you cannot spend a lot.
Yeah.
So either if you're staying with your parents and all, then in that case you have. But if you're trying to live by yourself, it is almost difficult.
Yeah, because
So
there's rent, and it also depends on if you're living in a metropolitan city, tier 2.
Exactly, location and everything.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you may not have zero savings. But generally, in that case, let's say, okay, fine. Let's say you're earning a little bit more, and then your income is more than your expenses. Let's consider this scenario when you're 25 years old.
Right.
So in that case, the question is, would that person be able to invest? And if he invests, would he invest in high risk, high reward kind of a situation, or an investment product? So most likely, as far as we have seen, it is not so.
Yeah.
So generally, at least in India, most of them go for, because their earnings is very less.
Right.
They try to save as much as possible and they
choose the safest.
Choose the safest one. Either they go to fixed deposits or they just keep it in the savings account. And things like that.
Yeah, like you mentioned. Yeah, from what I can see from my circle and from the people I know, most of them do choose like fixed deposits, recurring deposits, or just savings accounts. From the people I've talked to, there's not many people who are willing to invest in mutual funds and stocks. Like, no, it's like a huge no. Like, I can't even bring up the conversation of stocks.
The thing is, the mindset should be different actually, because what is the general consensus whenever you go to a financial planner or whenever you go to some experienced investor, right? So what they recommend doing, what everyone will recommend doing is, first build up your emergency savings. Let's say, for example, let's say you take your expenses. We already discussed this, right?
Yes.
We take 6 months of expenses or 3 months of expenses. We save it, and whatever is beyond that particular leftover, we have to invest it. And when you're young, you always go for high risk, high reward investments because you have your time horizon. So if your rewards pay off, that means that even if it doesn't pay off, over time it will increase in value to such a high level that it is much possible that you will not need to save so much in the later part of your life. So try to save as much possible and try to take as much risk as possible when you're young. The other advantage is, when you're young, your expenses are low and you don't have that much experience, so you can always easy to switch or easy to get another job. So in that case, it is much better if you take a little bit of better, if not the highest risk, little bit more risk than what you're usually comfortable with.
Exactly, more than what you usually do.
If you go to, if you're actually comfortable only with savings, do fixed deposits. If you're only comfortable with fixed deposits, go for something like higher return kind of a bond or a higher return mutual fund. So just push yourself to a little bit extra when you're young.
Right.
But when people are in the middle age, like let's say they're in their mid 30s or 40s, they cannot take high risk because they have dependents, they have parents to support and a lot of other scenarios. So they they should not take a lot of risk, but they should make sure they take a little bit amount of risk so that they plan for retirement, but they should not take too much of a risk.
Yeah, makes sense. And you also mentioned a little bit about risk-free returns, which we talked
That is
about right
something
now.
very important to understand, is what exactly is risk-free return. Because whenever, let's say, for example, you invest in real estate now,
Right.
this is very common. Like, most of our parents' generation, people who save money, they invest in real estate. So the only advantage of investing in real estate, you can't sell it anytime.
Right.
You plan to hold it for a long time.
Yeah.
So that is the main advantage. That's why when you say, let's say you invest in a particular house, after 20 years you sell it, it would seem like, that the value of the house has increased so much, that you have made so much returns.
Absolutely.
But what you have to sit down and calculate is how much returns have you got, excluding inflation and excluding a risk-free rate of return. So let's say, how do you calculate this? So let's take an example. You buy one house for 1 lakh. After 20 years, it is 1 crore.
Okay,
that is the assumption. So it has multiplied by 100 times.
Right.
So you think that you have received 100 times returns.
Right.
But that is not so. What you also have to consider is inflation.
Right.
So what is the compounded inflation of that 1 lakh in the 20 years? How much has it depreciated?
Because the value of money
depreciates. That is the first thing. If inflation was too high, that means your 1 crore is basically
the same.
It is not actually 100x returns. It may be only 10x, or it may be only 7-8x.
Okay.
7-8 times your return.
Okay.
That is just one part of it. The other part of it is, if you had chosen to put 1 lakh in a fixed deposit, and that fixed deposit after 20 days, how much does it earn? So that value has to be subtracted from your total return.
Right.
So only after subtracting the inflated value of that money and subtracting the rate of fixed deposit return or a government security return,
Right.
only then whatever is left over, that is your actual returns.
Yeah.
So you have to actually sit down and calculate that. Have you actually
made a substantial profit, or is it
just same as before?
Yeah, same as before.
Considering inflation and other.
Or exaggerated a
exactly.
little. Okay, so that's a little bit about risk-free returns.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about how usual people think, how they try to save, how they try to grow their money, but then millionaires are a whole different
Volume,
yeah. So it's very important to see how they also think and how they manage to save and grow their money.
So there are different kinds of millionaires. I think there was also a very popular conversation in social media about self-made millionaires.
Right.
I think, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, self-made millionaires. So it's like, so they have raised the capital by themselves, and then they have accrued a lot of money. That is like a self-made.
But do you remember the controversy?
Oh yeah. So it was like, so there was this list that they made about self-made millionaires, and there was this particular person called Kylie Jenner who was on the list, and it was very controversial because obviously she comes from a family where there is a lot of wealth, and the controversy was that she did not raise her own capital was given to her, and she made a business out of it.
Basically, it is out of an inheritance.
Yes, inheritance. So self-made business.
So that's the thing. So even in millionaires, there are a lot of things like that. So there are, when you say self-made millionaires, what do we actually mean? It's very important to understand. And there are other kinds of millionaires also. People who have an inheritance from their parents or grandparents, or people who actually start a business on their own, probably borrow from relatives and family, and then they start a business and then they make $1 million. These are all very, very different types of personalities.
Right. I just think that sure that is debatable. That's something to engage yourself in. But I think at the end of the day, the point is that they did manage to grow their wealth. Yeah. So
the most important part is what are the routes they have taken to either protect their money or to grow their money. Generally, most of the millionaires who have been millionaires for a long time. So either most of the time they receive homes or real estate from their parents. So it is very, very easier for them to just, if they don't sell it, if they just keep it, eventually the value of that property will increase at least equal to inflation, such that their wealth increases. So they are still wealthy. And there are some people who actually invest in stocks, bonds. they're very smart investors. Then basically, but they do have other kind of hobbies and passions. And as part of that, they also do other investing and things.
Right.
And they grow their money.
Right.
These are different kind of mindset. The other mindset is you have nothing. You start a business or you start a venture or you get a job and eventually you grow and you become a millionaire.
Right. Yeah.
So it's very, very rare for people to work for someone else and then be a millionaire unless you are like really talented or like high CEO or upper management kind of a thing. It's easier for them to be employed and then become a millionaire. But these are very rare scenarios. Like most of these people would be like working for 25 years, 30 years in a particular company or in a particular sector, gain experience and go into upper management and then earn the $1 million. But there are younger millionaires or something like that who either do some kind of investing in real estate, do some kind of investment or start their own business or entrepreneurs. They are entrepreneurs have the highest chance of making $1 million quickly.
Right.
All the other parts are a little slow and steady kind of a thing.
You see, this season has been very interesting because we talked a lot about personal finance in general, but generally about how to manage your money better, how to invest in good products, how to make sure your money is safe and all of that. So it's just sure, this is a summarization of all of what we've discussed this season, but I think it's very important because from what I have seen and from what we've heard from our own circles, we've still got a long way to go in terms of managing our money better. Like from the people I've talked to and all, there's still a lot that we can talk about.
Money is a little bit personal as well, so basically it sometimes mostly handed down. The knowledge of handling money is handed down from generation to generation, and how one generation makes money is not necessarily how the next generation can make money. Sometimes there needs to be some kind of an evolution. But people who are in business, generally business families, the children also take up the same business, so it's kind of challenging. So sometimes they don't know of other kind of avenues. They only know how to make money through business. So the knowledge is basically kind of passed through, but there is a lot more knowledge that we can learn by ourselves. How different people think, how different people kind of grow their money and so on.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's very important to still keep the conversation going as much as possible. And so that is almost the end of this season, but we'd also like to give you guys a couple of further reading materials that you might find interesting. So a couple of books that
I think one of the book we have talked about previously as well. It's called Psychology of Money. Basically, how different people think about money and like some popular investors. And it's a very nice book. And the other one is called The Millionaire Next Door. So generally, it's actually a nice book about. I think it was actually released in 1996. It was actually a kind of a survey or kind of a story about millionaires and in US how they made their money and how are there high flashy kind of millionaires, how there are very reserved farming kind of millionaires and how there are wealthy family kind of millionaires, different and how they differently think about money, how they spend and things like that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. So that is the end of season 2, and I think that's a good spot to end it there today. Hey, thanks for listening to Bob and Tag Talk. Please consider following us on our Instagram and Facebook pages. We put out weekly summaries of the topics discussed on the podcast. And if you found this episode informative, please like, share and subscribe.